I'm going to give you 9 chess skills that you need to enhance to significantly improve your chess. I will tell you how to train these skills and the best study material to use. The training will be long and tough, but if you put in the work, then your chess will improve greatly. You ready? All these chess skills are beneficial to anyone at any level, but their importance and how much time you spend on them differs at different rating levels. Since some of you may not have an over-the-board rating, I will therefore be using chess.com ratings. Now, let's jump into the first skill, tactics. These are short combinations that involve things like forks or skewers, etc. If you are below 1200, tactics should be your main focus. Please still watch the video to the end, as the other concepts will become more important as you become stronger. But the main problem for weaker players is still tactics. Your training plan should mainly consist of playing games and solving tactics until the point where you don't even have to look for forks, as your mind instantly sees them. 1 and 2 move checkmate patterns are also extremely important. If you're under 1200, most of your games will be decided by hanging pieces, tactical blunders, or missing checkmates, so it's important that you spend most of your time on tactics. The 3 websites I recommend for doing these tactics or puzzles are chess.com, Lichess, and Chess Tempo. Chess.com does require you to have a certain membership for unlimited tactics, but if you can't afford that or don't want to pay, Lichess and Chess Tempo are free alternatives and are just as good. It's up to your preference. Now, after 1200, tactics are still incredibly important, but you can start spending more time on other skills as well. Ultimately, you need to look at your own games and see if you are missing a lot of tactics or not. This will determine how much time you spend on it. For the more advanced players, 2000 up, if you are a little below this or think you should be this level, then you can use this advice. As an advanced player, you have most of the tactical patterns down to intuition, but you probably still miss a few tactics when in time pressure. You should spend time on more complicated tactics, but you should also spend time on simpler tactics, as you need to now perfect your tactical intuition. The reason for this is that I can guess most of you advanced players watching will easily spot a tactic on the board. The difficulty is when you need to spot a tactic in a variation. Most of your missed tactics won't be in the current position, but in variations. A common thing will arise when you want to play a certain move, calculate it, and then realize it doesn't work. And then when you check it with the engine afterwards, you discover that it does work, but you missed a specific tactic from afar. You've probably experienced this, and if you haven't, then you are probably not at this level, not calculating deep enough to make these mistakes, or you are not analyzing your games. Or you are coming back to this video after spending a lot of time honing your skills, and now you don't make these mistakes anymore. Now, skill number 2 goes hand in hand with skill number 1 and skill number 3. I'm talking about calculation. Calculation differs from tactics, as tactics are the quick combinations, whilst calculation involves longer sequences consisting of multiple variations and tactics. Usually, a lot of calculation consists of tactics and the variations, and therefore, if you do not have a good tactical foundation, then you will struggle with calculation. So, for beginner and intermediate players, improve your tactics first and then start focusing on longer lines and calculation. For the advanced viewers, calculation starts to become very important as you improve in strength. You need to first identify if the position is static or dynamic. In static positions, the positions are usually very slow and positional and will require you to anticipate more your opponent's plans and ideas as opposed to concrete variations. There are 2 skills spoken about later in this video that can help with that. As for dynamic positions, these positions are usually more complicated, with more tactics, loose pieces, and potentially weak kings. These positions are the ones where calculation is an absolute must. Once you understand what type of position you are dealing with, then you can decide how to approach it. You have to start your calculation by identifying candidate moves. These are a few possible moves that you think are good based on your evaluation and understanding of the position. For example, if your opponent created a threat last move, then your candidate moves should involve possible moves dealing with that threat. And if you've castled on opposite sides, then your candidate moves must involve starting an attack, among other things. Once you've identified a few candidate moves, you must start calculating the most forcing moves first. These moves consist of checks, captures, and attacks. These moves usually demand an immediate response from your opponent and are easier to calculate compared to non-forcing moves due to your opponent's limited options. This is why calculation is more effective in dynamic and forcing positions as opposed to static ones. You should calculate somewhat like a tree in the sense that you go down each variation and assess all your opponent's options. This can be a very daunting task, so I will give you some ways to practice this. You can use puzzles to train calculation just as you use puzzles to train tactics. With tactics, you should set the puzzle difficulty to your level or easier in order to build up the quick intuitive patterns. Then you can practice some slightly more difficult problems, and then for calculation, I recommend setting the puzzle rating to a significant level above your own. This is so that the problems will train you to spend a few minutes calculating deeper and wider than you are used to, and in doing so, will improve your calculation. You can also purchase some chess books on calculation, as they can also be very instructive. Ultimately, calculation comes down to depth and breadth, and the next two skills will help with both of these things. Moving on to the third skill, visualization. In chess, if you have only one forced variation, then you could technically calculate forever, as all you have to do is keep track of the position in your mind. This is called depth and refers to how many moves deep you can calculate. A way to drastically improve your calculation depth is by improving your visualization. Visualization refers to how well you can see the chessboard in your mind. How well and how accurately can you see possible variations in your mind? Ever seen grandmasters play blindfolded chess? That's thanks to their incredible visualization. If you improve your visualization, then you will not only be able to calculate better, but your friends will also think that you are some kind of genius. But how do you actually improve this? For beginners, this will start to improve as you are solving tactics. When you solve tactics, you are essentially visualizing short combinations. Another essential is learning the squares on the chessboard until it becomes almost intuitive. This will assist in notating during games and will help when going over master games. The goal is to become familiar with the diagonals and squares that pieces can go to and see, because you essentially need to see all of this without seeing any of this. What often happens is that players visualize a few moves and then forget that they moved a piece and then get confused between the current position and the one in their head. This is why grandmasters sometimes look away from the board when calculating, so that they don't get confused with the position on the board and the one in their minds. For the more intermediate and advanced players, visualization can be improved by going over master games. This is why being able to read notation and being familiar with the squares is important, so you can read the notation without having to look at a board. You don't have to visualize a whole grandmaster game in your mind, as it may become difficult. I recommend to use a board and go over possible variations in your mind. Finding annotated games is super helpful for this. Once you get comfortable being able to play through variations in your mind, then you can start trying to go over chess games in your mind and without the use of a board. Also, if you are going over the game with the intent of learning something, then I recommend using a board so that you can clearly see the plans and ideas. If you are going over a game with the intent of improving visualization, then I recommend seeing how far you can go without a board. The next best step to improve visualization is to throw yourself in the deep end by playing blindfolded games. You can do this against friends or even much weaker players. This will train you to keep track of the board in your mind, and when you get better, you will be able to calculate variations as well as keeping track of the board in your mind. Visualization will greatly improve your calculation and your ability to see the board without seeing the board. And blindfolded chess is the greatest thing to show friends to make them think you're a genius. Now, moving on to skill number 4, evaluation. This skill will greatly improve your overall chess and your ability to cut down branches in your calculations, making chess calculation a more manageable task. Evaluation is the skill of being able to look at the position and make an objective judgment about whether it is winning, losing, drawn, or anything in between. Evaluation is a skill that is crucial to players of all levels and becomes more important as you get stronger. Usually, players are able to calculate lines easily, but the difficulty comes in evaluating the final positions and picking the best line. There are two main things that influence evaluation, and then a lot of many smaller things. The two main things are king safety and material. King safety is the most important, as it doesn't matter whether you are better in every other aspect and up all the material if your king is getting checkmated. Material is the second most important thing and usually plays a bigger role in evaluation. The reason is that in a lot of positions, both kings will be safe, and then a pawn-up advantage or a piece-up advantage can usually be decisive. But as you get better, opponents aren't just going to have weak kings or give you material. So if king safety and material is equal, then how do you know who's better? This comes down to the smaller factors, which are usually not that important at beginner level, but can be decisive at advanced to grandmaster level. These smaller factors include things like pawn structure, piece activity, space, open files, and many more things. Wilhelm Steinitz was the first to introduce this way of thinking. You don't have to be winning due to a massive attack or material advantage. You can also be winning because you have a better pawn structure, the bishop pair in an open position, more space, and better piece activity. Your goal as a chess player should be to understand and consider all these factors, and then make an objective decision about the evaluation, and that will determine how you should play. For example, if you evaluate that you are worse because you have less space and are cramped, then you should trade pieces to create space. If you misevaluated this position, thinking you are better, then you will want to keep pieces on the board, which is the incorrect decision and can lead to you potentially losing the game. A good evaluation also helps in your calculation breadth, as you will be able to evaluate all the different resulting positions and choose the one in which you think is best. But how do you improve evaluation? This skill is a bit tricky to train, as it's not as simple as just solving puzzles every day. This skill takes time to improve and will improve with your playing strength. Ways you can improve this is by studying games of past positional geniuses. This is because their games won't have many crazy tactics, but will rather focus on positional features and will improve your evaluation. Find games where you see a grandmaster out play another grandmaster due to a weak square or weak pawns, or pay attention to how piece activity or how the bishop pair can be decisive. Also look at how two knights work. A lot of evaluation training will also fall under positional training, which we will speak about next. It's one of those skills that you need to be aware of, but will also improve as you spend time on positional play and studying positional masterpieces. Examples of good positional players and games to study will be given to you under the next skill, which is positional play. But before that, one more enjoyable way to train evaluation is to just watch chess YouTube or live tournaments where there is an evaluation. Listening to grandmaster commentary and comparing positions on the board and the eval bar can be instructive. You can also play against bots on chess.com with the aid of the evaluation bar so that you can see what moves influence the evaluation in a positive or negative way. Moving to skill number 5, positional play. Improving this skill will also improve your evaluation, as most positional aspects influence evaluation. Earlier we spoke about static and dynamic positions. In dynamic positions there are more tactics, and calculation is more important, whereas in static positions, positional understanding is more important. Most chess games have a combination of these types of positions throughout the game, so it is useful for you to understand and train both. Positional play consists of things like space, king safety, material, piece activity, central control, and many more. These are the same concepts under evaluation. The difference is that evaluation is the skill of looking at these aspects and deciding if they are advantages or disadvantages and who is better because of them. Positional play is the skill of creating these advantages, improving your position, and exploiting your opponent's disadvantage. It also involves building on these advantages and understanding the plans and ideas that go with them. But how do you learn these ideas or understand them? For beginners, stick to tactics for the most part, but it wouldn't hurt learning some of these ideas. You can learn these ideas actively or passively. For the most part, a lot of positional play has to do with pattern recognition. For example, in this position, beginner and intermediate players may struggle to come up with a move. But advanced players may easily spot bishop g5 with the idea of getting rid of the black knight so that the white knight can sit in the center and on an outpost. If you have seen this idea before, then it becomes easier to find these ideas in the game, as your pattern recognition spots the overall pattern or idea, and you just have to apply it to the current position. So there are active ways to improve pattern recognition and passive ways. Active ways include studying specific concepts and familiarizing yourself to new ideas. This can be done by studying past positional masters like Petrosian or Karpov. These games will teach you the technique of slowly improving your position and exploiting small weaknesses. Positional ideas can also occur in very dynamic positions, like the battle for the d5 square in Sicilians. You can grasp these sort of positional, dynamic ideas from players who played very dynamic and aggressive chess. They will teach you ideas of how to convert piece activity or development into other advantages, or how to improve the position, apply maximum pressure, and then win with a combination or attack. These players would be the attacking and dynamic geniuses of the past, people like Kasparov and Tal. Ultimately, you are bound to learn new ideas from studying games of whoever, whether it be Carlsen or Fischer or any other great player. It is important that you spend a lot of time trying to figure out and understand these ideas or find annotated games or YouTube videos explaining these ideas. Studying what are known as classic games are also extremely helpful, as each classic usually illustrates one positional idea very well. And after studying multiple of these games, you will start to build up a library of these patterns and ideas. The second way of gaining these positional skills is by passively studying them. This is more of a subconscious way of studying the ideas. You will have to study these ideas actively, but it's also effective to just go through Grandmaster games quickly or by just watching chess content. The idea for this passive studying is that you just consume chess content whenever you can. When you are eating a meal and watching a chess video, you are not actively studying the game or trying to figure out variations, but rather you are just passively absorbing the content. Doing this a lot is especially effective for beginners, as you will start to develop simple pattern recognition and you will start to get an intuitive feel for the game. For more advanced players, the ideas that you need to improve aren't really going to come to you through passive watching chess content, and most of the advanced ideas are deep in nature and will therefore require you to spend more time analyzing and understanding these ideas. Ultimately, the way you acquire these new ideas is based upon your skill level. If you are a beginner, have completely no idea what to do or where to put your pieces, I recommend that you do a lot of passive studying. Just watch a lot of Grandmaster games and try and find simple patterns. Look at how they put their pieces in the center, or how they develop their pieces to control the center. If you are advanced and are now in a middle game where you see possible moves but cannot make up your mind on the right idea or plan, then find games played in your openings and try to grasp the ideas that Grandmasters played in that position. Look where they put their pieces and try to figure out what they were calculating, etc. It is useful if you have a coach, otherwise annotated games, YouTube videos, or even spending hours by yourself trying to figure out the game are all good solutions to improve. As an advanced player, it's usually up to you how much time you spend going through the games and how deeply or shallowly you analyze them. So positional play is the short-term plans and ideas in a position. On the contrary, longer plans and ideas bring us to skill number 6, strategy. Strategy is to positional chess as calculation is to tactics. Just as calculation is the deeper skill and is made up of tactics, strategy is the long-term planning, consisting of positional ideas and many more things. A positional idea would be getting the knight to d5 in the Sicilian. It's simple and has to do with positional patterns. The strategic idea would be to attack on the king side. The one is a simple plan that will result in a small advantage. This is usually more concrete and easier to achieve. The strategy is a bit more abstract. You know the ideas of how to attack, but the exact moves and way of attack is also determined by you opponents. Here, the strategical idea of attacking will take place over the next 10, 20, and even more moves. It's the long-term planning in the position. But how do you improve this? Well, this is tricky, mainly because strategies themselves, for example the attack, can be simple concepts, but the execution of the strategy, that's the part that takes skill. The objective should be for you to take your openings and early middle game ideas and research the long-term ideas behind them. Strategies can range from a few moves to 20 to 30 moves even. An example would be the French defense. From the first move of the game, when Black decides to play the French, he creates the problem of a poor light square bishop. White's strategy or long-term goal would be to exploit this poor bishop, and Black's strategy would be to activate it. Both sides will use positional ideas, tactics, and calculation to achieve this strategy. If White's strategy is successful, then Black sometimes just loses the game due to the bad light square bishop. From move 1 until the end game, White had the strategy of exploiting the poor light square bishop, and now some 40 moves later he is winning because the light square bishop is utter garbage. Another example of this is in the King's Indian defense. Black is left with this dark square bishop that is stuck. Therefore, his strategy is to try and open up the diagonal. How does he achieve this? By using positional patterns and ideas. For people familiar with this type of position, f5 is a very natural move with the idea of striking at white's center and trying to open up the bishop. The move f5 also plays into another strategy that is relevant in the position. In these positions, black wants to start a kingside attack, hence the expansion on the king side, and white wants to start a queenside attack. As I have illustrated, strategies are the long-term plans and ideas, and one would usually use positional ideas, tactics, and calculation to achieve the strategic plan. To improve this, I just recommend learning the strategic ideas of your openings and middle games that result from them. Speaking about openings, skill number 7 will teach you how to start the game, while skill number 8 will teach you how to end the game. So without further ado, the skill that everyone thinks will make them drastically improve in chess: openings. For beginners, you need to start off by understanding the opening principles. This involves developing your pieces, controlling the center, and learning where to put your pieces. Once you've got that down, then you can actually start learning some openings. You need one opening for white, one for black against e4, and one for black against d4. And you can spend a small amount of time looking at less common openings if opponents play them often. I recommend you playing e4 with white. The reason being is that you are going to learn the most about chess, and it is better in the long run for your chess improvement. e4 will expose you to open positions, closed positions, dynamic positions, attacking positions, and many more. Since this is not an opening video, I'm not going to explain the openings to you, merely just give you the names. It's up to you to go do research and learn them. Now when you play e4, your opponents can respond with e5, c5, e6, c6, and many more openings. Each of these openings will help you improve your understanding of different positions, structures, and ideas. You probably need to find a variation for each of black's responses that I just mentioned. You can play d4 if you really want to, but I don't recommend it as you won't get as much experience with the vast majority of chess positions, and you will limit the number of positions and structures you understand greatly. And don't play the London system or any stupid gambit. This is because these openings are either super repetitive or give you very easy wins, which in both cases can drastically limit your understanding of chess as a whole. You will never learn middle game strategy if you just win in the first few moves with a trap. Now for black, I recommend you playing the Queen's Gambit declined against d4 and just playing e5 against e4 and then developing your knights. Now, for the more intermediate and advanced players, I recommend that you don't spend too much time on openings as opposed to other aspects of chess. Stick to the more traditional openings, like your Ruy Lopez, Sicilians, Queen's Gambits, and so forth. You need to start understanding your openings on a deeper level, learning the plans and ideas and memorizing some moves. How much of this you do is dependent on you and the opening you play. But I recommend, if you are getting lost positions in the opening or have very little middle game ideas, then go revisit the opening moves and the early middle game ideas that ensue. Moving to the endgame. As Capablanca once said, in order to improve, you must study the endgame before anything else. While not entirely true, studying the endgame is crucial for chess improvement. The endgame is the final stage with few pieces and pawns left. The amount of time and the type of endgames you study depend on your rating. Beginners should learn to checkmate with queens and rooks, using the ladder mate technique, and know how to checkmate with a king and queen or king and rook. Understanding simple endgame principles, such as centralizing your king and placing rooks on the 2nd or 7th ranks, is also helpful. Most beginner games are decided in the middle game, so the endgame isn't as critical early on, but becomes increasingly important as you progress. For early to late intermediate players, knowing the basic mates is essential, but bishop and knight or double knight mates are less crucial. Focus instead on king and pawn endgames, understanding opposition, and mastering rook endgames like the Lucena and Philidor positions. If you find yourself in an unfamiliar endgame, seek resources to help you improve. Use YouTube videos and books tailored to your skill level, focusing on endgames you frequently encounter or struggle with. Advanced players should master theoretical endgames and shift focus to practical endgames. Dive deeper into rook and minor piece endgames and the complexities of king and pawn endgames. especially positions where it's unclear who is better. These studies will enhance your understanding and calculation skills. Studying games of great endgame players like Capablanca and Magnus Carlsen is also beneficial. Carlsen excels in creating practical problems in the endgame, often turning equal positions into wins. Additionally, maintaining stamina and concentration in long games can help you perform better in the endgame, potentially gaining critical points. Moving on to skill number 9, psychology. This is one skill that, although not based on the actual game, can significantly influence your results. How many times have you rocked up at tournaments feeling very nervous or have sat down to play shaking? It can be difficult to control these nerves and can result in a mental block. Ever been in an over-the-board game and you were just unable to calculate or think clearly due to stress or pressure? Another psychological issue is that after you win, you feel okay, as it may have been expected, or you achieved your goal, and you're somewhat happy. But when you lose, it feels like the world's going to end and that you should just quit playing chess. Chess is extremely hard psychologically as losses hurt so badly. Part of this is due to the fact that chess played perfectly is a draw. And so whenever you lose a game, it's because you made the mistake. You lost the game. And engines don't help with this, as they immediately show us what we did wrong and make us feel worse about ourselves. All these different emotions and thoughts are what make up chess psychology and is a big part of what makes chess even more difficult. Okay, so how do you improve this? The truth is, I don't know. There's no specific way to improve. It's really just a personal thing that you need to work on. There are various resources online that will show you different ways to improve this, but not all of them will work for you. You yourself need to find a way to deal with these emotions if they hinder your play or severely affect you. The goal was just to make you aware of this skill so that you yourself can discover a way to improve it. But ultimately, stress, frustration, not being able to calculate due to pressure, or not thinking clearly are all things that affect everyone, and your job should be to minimize these emotions and reduce their effect on your play. You need to strive to manage these emotions and improve the other skills spoken about in this video. Your goal should be to improve your other skills to the point where even on your worst day, you're still better than your opponent. If you've made it this far into the video, I hope that you've learned something and that I've made a positive impact on your chess improvement. Let me know if you like this kind of improvement content, and you can share some of your own improvement advice in the comments. This video took me a long time to make, so please consider liking and subscribing. Now go promote some pawns.